In a few moments, I'll sign a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. It's about time.
The Trump administration must lift their freeze on federal funding to Maine, a judge has ruled. The USDA must immediately unfreeze and release to the state of Maine any federal funding that they have frozen or failed or refused to pay because of the state of Maine's alleged failure to comply with the requirements of Title IX, the ruling states. Justice John A. Woodcock Jr. has barred Trump administration from freezing, terminating, or otherwise interfering with the state of Maine's future federal funding for alleged violations of Title IX without complying with the legally required procedure. USDA earlier announced a funding freeze and review of federal funding to Maine. This was in response to Trump's executive order on diversity and inclusion practices, limiting genders in U.S. to male and female. Maine has refused to comply with President Donald Trump's February executive order to ban trans athletes from girls' and women's sports. This prompted immense federal pressure, with Trump vowing to cut federal funding to the state if it refused to comply with the order during a February 20 speech. Maine officials filed a lawsuit against the USDA on Monday following the agency's decision to freeze funding to the state. The state accused the USDA of withholding funding used to feed children in schools, child care centers, and after-school programming, as well as disabled adults in congregate settings, an argument the judge agreed with. The judge noted that the freeze was due to Title IX violations, but it restricted the ability to provide meals to children and vulnerable adults. Republican Senator Susan Collins recently called for the issues between the administration and her state to be resolved, saying that she would continue to fight for federal funding for the state while also being against transgender athletes in biological female sports. The Department of Education also launched an investigation into the state due to the issue. The U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR, referred the Maine Department of Education, MDOE, to the Department of Justice Friday for continuing to allow trans athletes to compete in girls' sports. It's the second DOJ referral the state's educational institutions have faced in the last month over the issue. After the Department of Health and Human Services referred MDOE, the Maine Principals Association, and Greeley High School on March 28th. Maine was one of the many states to openly defy Trump's February 5th order to ban trans athletes from women's and girls' sports. The state's divide on trans inclusion was then brought to light when Maine State Representative Laurel Libby identified a trans athlete in a social media post who won a girls' pole vault competition for Greeley High School that month. Libby was censured by Maine's Democratic majority and Speaker Ryan Fecteau for the post, which has prevented her from carrying out other legislative actions to serve her constituents.